Good evening, everybody. It's Steve with Real Progress in Action. Folks, the Arctic is burning up, both underneath of the ice with zombie fires and absolutely insane climate change-driven winds that are absolutely cooking the Arctic. The ice melt, the changes that are going to come from this, they're epic. And they're just the latest in a million different things that are happening that should make us all really, really heavily focused on a Green New Deal. No one's talking about a Green New Deal. No one's talking about how to solve this. You know, we've had people on to talk about the concept of degrowth and trying to make it so that we can, try to build an economy that lowers all the emissions, et cetera. But folks, things are happening very fast, very fast. This isn't like some political ball game here, although I suppose it will turn into a political ball game. But we are not focused on a Green New Deal. And I readily admit a lot of that has to do with the shenanigans, if you will, of Congress and the squad who has kind of folded back into the ranks and not used their power as effectively as most of us would like to see them use it. In fact, many have just given up on the squad because they have been so ineffectual in terms of actually using their caucus to fight back. The days of AOC standing on Nancy Pelosi's desk are over. However, just yesterday, there were thousands upon thousands of people from Sunrise Movement that descended upon the nation's capital, one of the larger movements we've seen since the pandemic. Some people are realizing there is a real existential crisis going on. Far too few of us, though, are willing to tackle that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you all an article that I think is very important. And I'm hoping that this article will indeed help you to make some changes in terms of the focus of your activism. So this right here is from Scientific American, and it says the unprecedented heat wave in the Pacific Northwest driven by climate change. And I think that this should really, really set the stage for what we need to be thinking about as we go forward. I mean, it's kind of frightening as you look around and you realize that no one is really making meaningful climate change action. There's no real meaningful effort to be put into a Green New Deal. In fact, you see most activists not even talking about this. But a blistering heat wave obliterated high temperature records in Oregon and Washington over the weekend, ratcheting up risks for death and fires and underscoring the dangers of climate change. Portland, Oregon's biggest city, hit a sweltering all-time high of 112 degrees Fahrenheit yesterday at its international airport. The National Weather Service said that broke a record of 108 Fahrenheit set just a day earlier. Both days topped the previous record of 107 degrees Fahrenheit reached in 1981 and 1965. The temperature in Salem, Oregon's capital, soared to 113 degrees Fahrenheit yesterday, smashing a record of 108 degrees Fahrenheit hit in 1941 and 1927. The heat is expected to worsen today with a jaw-dropping high of 115 degrees. Think about that, folks. 115 degrees. 115 degrees. That is insane. For Portland, said Colby Newman, a meteorologist in NWS's Portland office. He says, I have not seen very many events where places are breaking their all-time record high temperatures by 4 degrees, 5 degrees, said Newman, who has been at NWS since 2008. It's one thing to break it by a degree or two, but it's another thing to literally break it by 4 or 5 degrees in places that have been 100 years worth of data or 120 years worth of data. That's pretty remarkable. And then further north, the Seattle Tacoma International Airport hit 104 degrees Fahrenheit yesterday with an all-time high that edged out the area's previous record of 103 set in 2009. Now, I'm not going to read the rest of this because I think that it speaks to the absolute despair that we're about to face. People are cooking. The Arctic is cooking. The ice is melting. And we're not working on a Green New Deal. And see, I think part of the problem is that most people have no idea what a Green New Deal even is. They have no idea about the framework that's being derived. And the reason is because they're so used to fighting for little one-off policy space. They're not used to a comprehensive framework to radically alter the way we live, radically alter the way we consume, radically alter the carbon footprint we emit, radically alter the mobilization of we the people to combat this. Within a Green New Deal, I didn't know what it was originally. It sounded like a neat idea, and different people have had different versions of this. A lot of pettiness about who created the idea of a Green New Deal and so forth. But the reality is, if we don't do something, and I mean radical, and a Green New Deal is a framework, so it can be as radical as we want it to be. You understand, Green New Deal is a framework for us to begin the discussion. But folks, the time for discussing was yesterday, the day before. Shit's happening now, right now. And so you think about what the standard commentary is about a Green New Deal. We're looking at reducing emissions by eliminating bad industries that are really polluting, fossil fuels, et cetera. Looking at capping carbon emissions and creating some sort of a tax trading, a carbon credit trading system. Because ultimately, if we don't bring carbon emissions down and way down fast, we're in deep trouble. Now, you saw during the pandemic where everybody was shut down, we did an amazing amount of work by literally closing it down. But no, it's picking up, and it's picking up fast. So a Green New Deal looks to reduce the carbon footprint first and foremost. It looks to create green energy. Green energy that I would like to see handled publicly, not privately. Green energy that I would like to see given away versus a for-profit model. Now, all this stuff is stuff we could debate and we could discuss. But you got to be in the game to discuss it. You got to be in the game to get legislation passed. And trust me, the people in Congress, the people in the Senate, they're not there to pass this legislation. The vast majority of them are there to prevent this kind of legislation from being passed, which is insane because this is how we live. But aside from reducing emissions, cutting emissions, getting to a net negative, sucking carbon out of the atmosphere, I mean, there's a ton of ideas, literally tons of ideas of desalination and all kinds of other things to literally take carbon out of the ocean, take carbon out of the air. There is all kinds of ideas out there to do this. Some of them good, some of them bad, but none of them being done right now. So the next layer to that, obviously, with eliminating dirty, bad fossil fuel type work, is transitioning those people in those jobs to new industries, to supporting a Green New Deal, to supporting infrastructure. And infrastructure should absolutely be based on climate change driven knowledge, sustainability baked into infrastructure. The infrastructure that we have today was built in a time where We weren't experiencing heat like this, and it's not stable. It's not even able to handle the temperatures. So we need sustainable infrastructure through this Green New Deal. We also desperately need that just transition for people in those bad jobs, those dirty industries, to swing into sustainable work, to swing into green energy jobs. We also need a federal job guarantee so no one is left behind. And with that job guarantee, we can mobilize people in defense of our existence. So as we look at this, we've got a job guarantee, a just transition, elimination of fossil fuels, elimination of bad, carbon emitting type fossil fuel industries, transitioning those people into sustainable employment. But there's a host of other things too, right? And these are the human capital. These are the things that substantively change the way we live. By making things more localized, by eliminating so much of the transportation and the frivolity of flying all over the place, we have a chance of reducing emissions yet again, like we did during the pandemic. But all of this, all of it, from planting trees to the job guarantee, which could in turn plant those trees as part of it, infrastructure, job guarantee, just transition. All of that requires funding. All of that requires us being prepared to spend trillions upon trillions of dollars into the economy, both in research, more research. And here's the problem. We have a choice of green imperialism, capitalism through greening the world, which is what people like Elizabeth Warren want to do. Green imperialism, green markets. And unfortunately, it's that kind of stuff that will sell the right wing maybe on saving us. And perhaps that's why they're holding out, is they're looking for the most capitalist way of bringing about these kinds of changes. But ultimately, if we don't have an infrastructure plan that takes into account sustainability, all this infrastructure spending will be for an old technology, for looking backwards, not forwards. So I'm hoping that Congress, with the help of activists, look at, when they say they want to do something about this, that they do something about this. We need to be organizing with people that are in the climate space, economists, and all the other activists that are working on degrowth and other environmental solutions, to really take this very, very seriously, very, very quickly. Now, what would it take to get a Green New Deal passed by this Congress and this president? Well, I don't think you're going to be able to, vote your way there. Your annual rite of passage isn't going to get it done. But taking to the street in sustainable fashion, staying in the street and not leaving, a general strike of sorts, some sustainable direct action, like the days of Occupy Wall Street. I think it's going to take that kind of a mobilization from activists to be able to make Congress act on this. The question is, will activists get together and make this happen? As it stands right now, the left, which is the only group that really truly cares about this stuff, is far too splintered into little teeny pockets of cliques and affinity groups. We need to put the colors down. We need to step away from the flags that we carry. And we need to unite around this. And as part of a Green New Deal with a job guarantee, we must have national Medicare for all, because the climate isn't going to wait for us. And there is no such thing as a state-by-state Green New Deal. Trust me, the states can't do it. And if that pisses someone off, that's too damn bad. We need a national Green New Deal, but we need more than that, because the United States is but a small speck on the planet. Yes, we have an outsized military presence. Yes, we have an outsized capitalist presence. But there's countries all around the globe that are impacting the Arctic right now. And so without international cooperation, any kind of a Green New Deal, any kind of climate action is going to fall flat on its face. I think that you all understand, at least I hope you understand, that this has really got to be the focus. We went through an entire pandemic without health care. And we're now marching for Medicare for all, which is very important. But Medicare for all is but another cog in a Green New Deal too. And that Green New Deal must be paid for at the federal level. And that means that national improved Medicare for all needs to be done the same way. It needs to be part of a whole initiative. And if we splinter off and we forget how vital and how impossible the world is around us right now, we've got no prayer of surviving this. Guys like Jason Hickel are out there really, really leading the charge on degrowth. Dr. Stephen Hale and Phil Lawn have been very, very vocal. We just had a friend, Lorenz Kaiser, who is a student who wrote a white paper on degrowth. And we had a podcast on our show, Macro and Cheese, where we presented his plan for degrowth. We talked about it at length. We have got to get serious about this. And I hope that we can find somewhere wearing green hats, because it seems like hats get people all willy-nilly in the legs and get excited. So let's get some green hats or something. Because if we don't have something that makes people say, hey, yeah, let me join in on that, I'm afraid it's going to be too late. I'm Steve Grumbine with Real Progress in Action. Have a great day, everybody. I'm out.